Last week, I put out a reel, a TikTok, and YouTube shorts asking you guys to ask me any open formula driving related question, which hopefully I can answer. In this video today, I'm going to run through those questions and give you my best answers. So if you're interested in what my thoughts are, definitely keep watching. For those of you new to my channel, my name is Martin and I started racing when I was 12. In the sim world, I've raced and beaten some of the best drivers in Australia. I worked as a driver and performance engineer in Formula 3 and I developed my own race strategy simulation software for Formula 1. I raced in KZ2 at the highest level and got pole position in my first ever race. I specialize in the open formula category and now have my own course and website where I can share my 20 plus years of driving experience with you, which I'll put a link to in the description below. Okay, so we're just going to go platform by platform. I'm just going to read out the question, bring it up on the screen, and then give you my best answer. Okay, so let's start with Instagram. So the first question here is from Travdell, and it says, did someone win the giveaway? Yes, they did. The gloves went to a guy named Robbie in the UK. So a young boy just setting up a sim rig and doing a little bit of karting as well. And no one won the helmet, of course, because a lot of the techniques that were listed in the comments were actually intermediate level. So things like trail braking, short shifting, late apex, very smooth with the steering. There were all these intermediate level techniques that were actually listed. And I put out a story recently as well that said, guys, you need to look for professional level techniques in this video. So I didn't share what those two were, but I gave an example, which was the manual closure of the DRS before going into Lesmos 2. That would be an example of a professional level technique. Why that's helpful is because with the manual closure of the DRS, it gives time for the aerodynamics to reattach to the car in full before you actually put the car into the corner. So that's an example of a small detail that's actually really helpful. And if you were to just, come onto the brakes and let the DRS close organically, there's no guarantee that the aerodynamics are fully attached, laminar, and settled before you put the car into the corner. So it's little details like that that are going to give you an advantage, which is what I was looking for. And unfortunately, no one put it. So yeah, you guys need to know that when it just says, when you guys are commenting trail braking, trail braking, trail braking, trail braking, it's obviously not that, okay? Trail braking is a very well known, very well understood, very well documented technique. So it obviously wasn't that one. Professional level is a little more next level. Okay, the next question from Donnie Hightam. How to know if the racing line is fast or slow? This might seem like a really basic question, but this is a very good question because I always say that in my programs, there's a racing line and there's racing line. Okay, so it's not just as simple as, going all the way to one side, opening up the corner and carrying good speed. It can become very complicated, and I always encourage my drivers to try different lines, okay? So we're talking about things like tight lines, we're talking about short corners, we're talking about sequence of corners like S's, we're talking about long corners like decreasing radius corners and increasing radius corners as well. So, and even on the straights actually as well, you might want to find a line down the straight that actually allows you to go faster down the straight. So, like I said, there's racing line and there's racing line. So how to determine which one is quickest? Well, of course, you got the lap time, the stopwatch. You've also got the delta, which is probably the most up-to-date, accurate, useful tool. The only thing I'll say with the delta is you've got to make sure that if you're between line A and line B, that you're fully optimizing line A and you're comparing that to your fully optimized line B, okay? So it's like, for example, comparing Roger with a one-handed backhand to Novak with a two-handed backhand. They both need to be excellent for you to then draw that comparison, okay? So if you're not maximizing one of the lines, like carrying good speed in and out like you should be, then, it's not a fair comparison. So you probably want to spend a few laps trying one line, spend a few laps trying the other line, get more data points for each, and then draw your conclusion from there. It's probably not good to try all of your practice one line and then try the other line only once. It's not fair for that line, So try them multiple times, check the delta, see how you feel as well, and watch the delta on the entry and watch the delta on the straight as well. If you don't have a delta and you have just a running lap time on your dash, That's also helpful. Find like a reference, like a tree or a curb or, a grandstand or something where you can say, okay, when I come past the grandstand, I'm at 52.4 seconds, running into the lap. And when I tried the different line, come past the grandstand, I'm at 54.3 seconds or whatever. So that's like in a way a makeshift delta. So really good question. It's not as simple as just open up the corner and carry speed. There's racing line and there's racing line. I'd argue that it's the most important thing in the sport. Okay, you got brake, steering, and throttle, which are the three elements, and the shifting, of course. So there's four elements. But other than that, the line you take is the most critical thing. Good question. Thank you. Okay, the next one comes from Jack Williams 12267. How much did your setup cost, and do you think you bought the best value for money equipment? Okay, so let's start with how much did the setup cost. So the steering wheel, all of this is available online. You can have a look. Maybe they've changed their prices. I'm not sure. So the steering wheel is about, and I'm talking in Australian dollars here, by the way. The steering wheel was about 2,500, if I remember correctly. So that's the wheel. The chassis was about 2,500 as well. The computer was 2,500. The seat was about 1,000, and the pedals were about 1,000 as well. The monitor was 1,000 as well. So you're talking, 2,525, 2,511. That's already, 10,700. It's probably, once you're all done with the cables, this and that. I've also got cameras, which you don't need. I've got microphone. I've got a touchscreen monitor to my left that I teach with, and little bits and pieces here and there. I think it was about 12,500 all done. So that's how much it cost. And what was the second part of your question was, do you think you bought the best value for money equipment? Yeah, I do. I generally do. I really do. Because there are cheaper and there are more expensive. I feel like if you go cheaper, like absolutely, it's totally fine. Like there is nothing wrong starting with, a $200 Logitech wheel and a little TV monitor or something. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Start there and see if you enjoy it. See if you enjoy the passion. If you are on that thing every single day, then you know it's time to upgrade. But that's where I started, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there are certainly worse and there are certainly better as well. There are some really cool simulators out there from Cool Performance who I really like, who've got electronic motors that move the pedal deck forward and back and move the seat forward and back. They've got like a master cylinder to control the brake feel so that it feels exactly like what you'll be pressing in the car. The steering wheel is obviously a little bit better. So there is definitely better and there's definitely worse. And that's why I say I think I did get good value for money there as well. Just depends what level you're at and how much you're going to use it. I always say if you use it every single day or a few times a week, then it's not a waste. But if you buy something really good, like good equipment, and you don't use it, it's a waste. So let that be your guide and start off as simple as you can. Okay, on TikTok, we've got some questions. Here we go. The first one, I think it's in like a Greek alphabet. So I'm sorry, I can't pronounce the name. The question is, do you have any spare equipment? Yeah, I do have a little bit. By equipment, I'm not sure if you mean, pedals, wheels, monitors, and so on, or you mean like racewear, like racing equipment, like gloves, boots, visors, and so on. I don't actually have any spare equipment. I don't have a spare wheel. I don't have spare pedals. They're expensive, as we discussed in the first question, or the question before, sorry. So they're expensive enough. I don't have enough to carry spares. But when I was racing, I do have I've got spare gloves, which I recently gave away. I've still got another spare pair of gloves. I've got spare boots and I've got spare visors as well. You see the helmet behind me has a black visor. I've got a white clear visor. I've got an iridium blue as well. So I've got spare visors, spare balaclavas. So I have plenty of spare race wear, and I might do another giveaway soon with a visor. That would be nice, or something cool. Yeah, maybe a visor signed by me would be great. So yeah, some spare race wear, but not spare equipment like sim equipment. The next one from RCC. How have your heroes influenced you to be a better coach and driver? This is a fantastic question. It's funny because my hero is not actually in motorsport. Roger Federer is my childhood hero, and I was just fascinated by the professionalism, the level of excellence, the attention to detail, the dedication to the sport, and the level that he went to was just, and then to just be an all-round normal nice guy away from the court. I think as a package it was just, yeah, that's why Roger was my childhood hero. So I did get the chance to meet him. I was involved in a New Year's Eve function in 2018 in Perth here in Australia, where Roger was sitting on a table with his partner Mirka, and I was on another table as a guest in 2018 in the New Year's Eve like ballroom function party. So I did get the chance to meet him and have a chat to him as well. And like to meet your childhood hero like that, like it's something I'll never forget and gets me emotional just talking about it. So what was the question there exactly? So Roger was my childhood hero. And how have they influenced you to be a better coach and driver? Well, that's like a very deep, excellent question. So like I said, with the attention to detail and the strive for perfection and excellence, that is, and I always draw comparisons between our sport and tennis, I say, what's going to separate Roger and Novak, or Roger and Rafa, or Rafa and Novak across 4 hours and 50 minutes? It's going to be something very small. It's going to be like in my professionals program, it's going to be the mindset, the mentality, a little bit of strategy, a little bit better fitness, a little bit better tactics, a little bit smarter, a better problem solver. Like it's something very small. So the level that they go to and the attention to detail is impressive. So that's the first thing. How they work with coaches is the second thing. So Roger had 3 coaches, a physical coach, Pierre, and 2 technical coaches, Ivan and Severin. Now, Roger had a technical coach dedicated to his backhand only. And for me, you guys know that I say the shots in tennis are like equivalent of the technical corners in racing. So the forehand, backhand, serve, volley, and slice is like the chicane, hairpin, double apex, S's, and long corners of constant radius. So he had a coach dedicated to one of those shots, the backhand. And that's the equivalent of hiring a coach to help you in chicanes, for example. It's very, very niche, very specialized, and very, attention to detail and striving for excellence. So that's something that I learned is like, there's levels, there's driving and there's driving. Like we said before about the racing line, there's racing line and there's racing line. So it's the difference between good and great is what I'm referring to here. So there were a few other thoughts that came to my mind when I read that question. How has he influenced me to be a better coach and driver? I think acting with humility as well, which is one of Roger's great strengths. Not only was he talented and hardworking, but he had the humility to say, I know a lot, but I don't know everything. And so I need these coaches to be able to discuss ideas and bounce off and try new things in the pursuit of excellence and in the pursuit of continuous improvement and continuous performance. So there's that to think about as well. And I'd like to think that I have that too. Like, yes, I know a lot and I'm very experienced, but I don't know everything. And if someone comes to me and questions why I'm doing things and maybe asks me to think in a certain way, like, sure, I'm open-minded enough and willing to learn as well. So that's what I learned off Roger. I think that helps me to be a better driver and a better coach as well. So fantastic question. Thank you. Okay, the next one is from an account with a smiley, or not smiley face, like a, sarcastic face. How much improvement could I expect, if any, by switching from my budget Logitech G29 to a more high-end wheel like a Monza or a Fanatec? I've got this question a few times actually. It's not so much, I was going to say it's not so much lap time, but then I remembered that I configure my own brake shape. I configure my own throttle shape. I've got all my buttons here. I've got the diff, everything on hand. So that is lap time in a way. But I'll stick to my original answer. It's not so much in the lap time. It's more in the consistency that you can really, things become, you have so much more control and feel with the equipment, everything just feels, there's a big difference between 45% and 46%, and the load that increases across that percentage of 1% is, is noticeable. The same with the braking as well. You can really feel things a little bit more, particularly if you have a load cell brake pedal. So consistency for sure. With regards to lap time, probably a little bit as well, but only once you configure the equipment in the right way, okay? And that's like a totally other skill. You might buy all the best equipment, plug it in, and do the same lap times, but you're not really taking advantage because you're not configuring the equipment, which is the next step. So you need to configure it, set it up, get used to it, and then you might find some more lap time and more speed. We're not talking much. I don't think we're talking much, honestly. When I started driving, I started with a keyboard, and A was accelerate, Z was brake, and I had the arrows left and right to corner left and right. And that was my simulator. And when I went to a wheel for the first time, I couldn't believe how much slower I was. I was like, I just didn't like, and I was 11 or 12 at this point. It was just foreign to me to have a range of steering where previously I had full steer or no steer. So it's just something you have to get used to and then adapt, and then continuous improvement. Like we spoke about in the previous question, you've got to constantly reinvent yourself as well. So it's difficult to quantify as a number, but it could be it could be 2 or 3 tenths a lap once you've got everything sorted. Okay, question, next one on TikTok from Flomptras. His names are good. What's the best cheap F1 racing setup for PS5? I'm probably going to say just Logitech. I feel like that's the best entry-level brand. You can get a wheel and pedal set for like $299 or something. You plug it in and, away you go. If it's compatible with PS5, which hopefully I think it is. But that's the best place to start. Like I said before, there's nothing wrong with that either. So definitely give that a go. See if you like it. And if you find you're spending more time on it and you absolutely love it, stick with it and upgrade and go from there. Certainly don't invest in all the best stuff straight away, because you don't know if you're going to enjoy it and you don't know if it's going to be a thing for you. So invest small initially, see how you go, test the waters, and go from there. Okay, the next question from MSC exclamation mark. Do you do any real life racing yourself? Not anymore. Unfortunately, coaching has absorbed most of my time these days. Trophies you can see behind me, we're not from the simulator, that's for sure, or from a lot of racing and learning as you go as well, but mainly in karting in KZ2 at the highest level in gearbox karting. That was my preferred category just because it's probably the closest thing to, proper high-end, F2, F1, not because of how can I explain this? Not because of the overall speed, because karts can only get up to, 130, 150 kilometers, and Formula One cars can get up to 370. So not because of that, but because of the speed and acceleration and rate at which things happen. Like corners come at you quickly, braking zones come at you quickly, downshifts have to happen quickly, the corners are over very quickly, and your brain's got to keep up with that, problem solve, and adapt to when you turn in, you feel something different. You might downshift more and go more, and then how you introduce the throttle, and things are just happening so quickly. Whereas in, GT cars or something, and I don't specialize in this category at all, but I imagine the braking zones are longer. So you've got so much more time when you're braking, and everything's a lot more progressive as well. Whereas in karting and open formula, the braking's done very quickly. The braking zones are short. It's more closer to my heart than any other category. So that's why I did KZ2. I'm planning to get back into it, by the way. So watch this space. Maybe I'll do a few races again in KZ. All right, we've got the final question on YouTube, and it says, what's the best budget sim racing setup for $500 if that's possible? $1,000 and then $1,500 plus. So yeah, assuming you're on quite a low budget, it would be quite tricky. Like, are we talking about just the racing equipment, or are we talking about the console, the PC, the monitors, and everything else? Because they're a cost as well. They're not for free. So I'm going to assume that you're talking about just the wheel and pedals and so on, and the console and the game or whatever. You've got that already. Okay, so 500. Like I said before, start with Logitech. That's right. Like I said, I started with keyboard. So Logitech was next step. And that's at the 500. Like you could probably get wheel and pedals under 500. So I hope that helps. For 1500, can you get a CSL Fanatec for that? I'm not sure. You might be starting to look into the direct drive category for something like that, and load cell pedals. But yeah, maybe lower end Fanatec products at that price point as well. Cool. So there are all the questions, guys. I hope I answered them as best I could. I hope I helped you, and I look forward to the next Q&A. You have to follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for when I put these videos out, just requesting you guys to give me questions, and then I answer them in a video like this. So again, I hope it's helped you, and I'll see you in the next one.